Welcome to Manage Your League Training. Today we're going to go over editing, viewing, registration, parent, and player records. So what we'll do is we'll take a look first at the registration list. So there's two ways to get to the registration list. You can either go to registration and either one of these, registration list or registration list chronological. You can also go to this button right here where it says your number of registrations and click on that, and that'll bring you over to registration list chronological. So now what you'll see here with registration list chronological, you'll see a bunch of names, levels, subdivisions, teams, parents, schools, player phone number, reg numbers. What you can do is you can actually click on the name of your player, and that'll bring up the reg edit window. So what you'll see here is a couple options. You'll see the registration ID number, which this number is 18039. You'll actually see the date and time that they registered, the season in which they registered, also which league, and then this just says sort by player name. That's when you actually look up players. So on this page here, you can see there's a couple options. We can actually add a new registration. So what this will do, it'll blank out the page that we're on, and we can actually add in new information to add a registration. We can also save anything that we've changed on this page. We can also delete the registration. I do not recommend deleting registrations at all. Only time I would delete is if it is a test registration, something that you put in, when you're testing your new season or your new registration changes. I would not delete any registrations for players. I would actually just change the reg status here to withdrawn instead of registered. So that way you don't lose any sort of payments or fees that may show down in the bottom here. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up one that has payments. So you can see we have a couple things here on the page. So now this one's been withdrawn, and that would be what, like I said, I suggest if you want to remove a registration, withdraw them. That way we don't lose this payment information that's down on the bottom. So if we have to do any sort of refunds or adjustments, we can do that. So over here, you're going to see a couple things. This is a returning player flag. So if the player has already played in previous seasons, this will automatically be checked. If the player was previously in another season, but for some reason wasn't in the system last season, you can come in here and check this option to just flag them as a returning player. Reg status, again, there's withdrawn, waitlisted, registered, and tryout. So if we wanted to move this back into registered player, we can click registered and hit save. Now this player will actually be registered again. So what we do here is if you look, there's affiliation. Affiliation may be if they're from an out-of-town league, if they're on a travel team from another league. If you're running a tournament and you have all these different towns that are applying their players, that might be where your affiliations come in. You'll also have division. So this player, since we've re-registered them, doesn't have a division right now. So what we can do is say we're going to put them in the minors AAA division. Click save. Once we save that, he'll be placed in the division, as well as the teams will actually load up. So now we can go ahead and click on one of the teams in the division, and we can click save, and now he'll be placed onto that team. Obviously, you can do things like the draft tool to put players on your teams, but this is if you need to make a quick adjustment during the middle of the season, if one player moves over to a different team for any sort of reason. So that's right here in the option. As you noticed, every time I made changes, I clicked save. When I changed the division, I clicked save so that the teams would populate. You have different things in here. You have coaching prospects. So if this player has a parent who is a coach prospect, as well as age. Age is going to be the age that is calculated based on when they registered, their date of birth, and when your cutoff date is. So if your cutoff date is, the first of the year, the age would be calculated based on the birth date and the first of the year. Grade is going to be whatever they placed in registration, as well as school will be whatever they placed in registration as well. There's also a field here where you can enter comments. This will also display any comments that the parent has entered during the registration process. So now if you look here, you have all your custom fields. So if any of these answers were checked, these would come up with a check in here, as well as, if they had a shirt size, say you need to come in here and change, say they called you and said, hey, they need a medium shirt, you can come in here, adjust the custom field, and then click save. That will update the custom field information. So now we have the player window here, so you can see some basic information on the player. The only thing we can adjust in this window is this ID number. So if this registration was actually wrong, had the wrong player, or if the player had a duplicate record and you needed to put the other record in here, you can actually delete this out, type in the new ID number, and then click save. And now the player will populate in here. So all this field is for this ID number. You can also click on the player name here in registration, and that'll bring you to the player edit screen, which we'll go over here in a minute. Other things here is you have your parent record. Same thing goes. You can type in the ID or click on the parent name to get to the parent record. You're going to have billing information here. So this shows your fees. So this would be your fee group, and then the amount that they were required to pay, and then your other fee group, as well as the amount that they were required to pay, and the total amount here. And then you can see the payment types. So they give credit card, authorization numbers, and the amount. If they still owed a balance, or if they gave you a check, this is where you can click here and go to make payment, and then you can add the check information in here. So you can type in a check number, you can choose check. You can also, if they were with you or on the phone and you wanted to put in a credit card, you can put in credit card here, and it'll open up a credit card window to process credit cards. The other thing is, if you put in cash, it's still going to require that you put in a check number. You may want to put in some specific information, maybe you want to put in your name to say who took the cash, or you can just type in cash in here, and then you could type in the amount of the cash and click auto apply. That'll apply it across all the balances for the player. So now the other option in here is volunteer preferences. This is if any of the parents have chosen to volunteer as any one of these positions here. You can actually view these or adjust these right in the registration. So now we'll take a look at the player edit screen. So now that we click on the player ID, this will bring us to player edit. So up here in the top box, we're actually going to see the player ID number. Now, same options are at the top. You have your add player, your save, and then your delete player. Again, only delete if it's test data. Having extra player records in the system won't really affect anything. You can delete them if you want, but just remember, once they're deleted, you can't get them back. So we have a couple options in here. You can actually add photos. You can change photo or remove a photo. A lot of leagues are doing this now for security purposes, obviously, to make sure the players are who they are, and even the parents are putting in the parent pictures to make sure the parents are who they are. So the first name here, last name, you can change all their main information, date of birth. For the player, you can add a username and password here so they can log into the front end if they like. And then you also have emergency contact information here you can edit, as well as if your league's collecting birth certificates, you can come in here and say, yes, I have this player's birth certificate, and then save. So now you know that this birth certificate is on file with the league, and if you ever had any question for it, you can come in here and say, oh, yep, we do have his birth certificate, let me find it. Also, proof of residency is here as well. So then in here, you're going to have any seasons that the player has played. So this will be any previous seasons as well as the current, and then any comments. We also have if they're an official, so some information will show up in here if the player is an official. So if he runs, as an umpire or anything like that. Memberships, so if your league does any sort of membership fees, this will show any memberships that they currently have active or have had active in the past. You also have the parent information again over here. You always want to make sure that the parent information matches up on both the player and the registration. The registration is more on a season-by-season basis, where this is more of the permanent information. Some families may have the biological parents associated with the player, but in registration may have whoever the player lives with, so might have mom and stepdad or vice versa. So in here as well, you're going to have any player custom fields. So these are the fields that follow just specifically the player from season to season, as well as some options that they've chosen. So the player may have made permission to say, yes, I want to receive SMS. They've allowed their photo displayed, allowed their bio to display, allow stats to display. They can include their options on the public page. So these are some permissions that are here, as well as any of the custom field answers that they've performed. You can edit and adjust those and then click Save. So either we can click on the parent name here, or we can click on the parent name here, and this will take us to the parent edit. Parent edit will look very similar. What you're going to see is some information in here. You can change their email addresses, their main contact information, change their photos, things like that. You have their volunteering preferences in here as well. This is their username and password area, as well as permissions. And then you also have board permissions. So if you want to add someone as a specific board member, you can come in here and say, oh, this person is a volunteer coordinator. Now they're going to be associated to the list of board members. So when you go into the emailer, you can actually choose that option to email them or include them into an email. You can also edit the positions and add new ones. So if I wanted to add a new position or remove any positions that are there, I can. So this is a nice way to make groups of people. There could be the volunteer coordinators or the volunteer group or the officiating group or the field maintenance group, so that you can kind of group all these people together into easy to use email lists. You also have your custom fields here for the parent. You're going to have your children information, so what registrations are currently active, and then any sort of registration receipts or summaries for this season. And then you have any of the previous registrations that they've had for any of their children. Down here you have your payments, where you can edit, delete, or adjust your payments. So if you click on the payment number, you're going to see some options in here. This is going to show the payment amount, when they made it, the type. And then this is going to break down where the actual payments went to. You can adjust any of these options. You can go in here and change and say $200 is supposed to go to this child and $50 to this child, and break it up however you like. You can also delete the payment as well. So you can remove the payment completely. So that is, if you've done a refund on it already through your authorized.net, you can go in here, click delete the payment. So now that payment is gone. And then you also have, next to the payment options here, you have see fees. So in see fees, you're going to have all these options pop up. Basically, it's going to show you a breakdown of all the fees that the player owes, and you can actually click on and edit it. So the registration, we're going to have our registration fees, and right here you see Morris has a $90 fee. Let's say he needed a discount. We can actually go in here and we can change this to $85, and then we can click edit. That'll actually update it, and hit close. Now he only owes $85. So if we were to actually close out of this window, go back to our registration window, and just refresh here, you'll see, oh, I'm not on. I went on the wrong player. So this was actually William. So we can click on the reg ID here, and it'll actually show up the player that we need. Excuse me, it was on Walter. So Walter now has an $85 registration charge instead of a $90 registration charge, and you can see that we do actually owe them $5 back because they've already paid for it. So it's a nice way to edit or adjust your fees that you need to, if you need to make adjustments, or if a fee needs to be increased because they went up a division, you can do that as well. And then there's any membership fees down here in the bottom. With player and parent edit and even registration edit, you can get to these windows individually by going into registration edit, or members, players and parents, player edit, and parent edit. With both of these pages, you can actually come in here to the lookup and type in the last name or the first name or whatever you want to search for, and you can get a list of all the players that associate. So now we were using Walter. We can come back to Walter here and now pull up his player information. The registration edit window, you can only put in registration numbers, but in parent and player, you can actually search for names up here and find them. That's it today for the editing of registration, player, and parent information and records. Please stay tuned for more videos, and thank you for using Manage Your League.